Well, hi everyone, and welcome again to the Effective Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Jackson, and today is episode 66. And today I'm going to be talking with Kirsten, who is a graduate student from the University of Woolongong. She's actually currently looking for a job for next year in 2021. So if you have a position for a PE teacher, I highly recommend that you get in contact with Kirsten. I'm sure she would really much appreciate that. Now, I'm going to say I was chatting to Kirsten in the Teachers PD Facebook group. I put up a post just about, let's celebrate teachers who have tried something new and, how it went. And she put up a comment about how she had done a lesson recently where she had done an escape room and some orienteering with her Year 8 classes. And so I thought it would be a fantastic thing to have her on the podcast to talk about what she did, how it went, and to talk about how that then links in with lifelong learning. So thank you so much for joining us, Kirsten.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So Kirsten, can you just tell us a little bit about your escape room activity that you ran with your Year 8 PTH class?
Yep, sure. So I decided to run an escape room with my Year 8 class, and it was nutrition themed because I thought that would allow me to develop a lot of activities from and allow them to really explore the content in depth. They had already gone over some of the content of nutrition in term 1. So revisiting that in term 4 as well, I felt was a good way to just solidify and deepen their knowledge of certain content in that. So how it worked, do you want to know how it worked?
Yeah, tell us.
Okay. So how it worked was ideally I would really want to develop these missions where I would put them in an envelope and hide the envelope within a classroom, and then the students in smaller groups of about 4 to 5 would find these envelopes around the classroom and then do their particular mission. But it didn't work out that way for me, as teachers, might find, especially not having a particular room. So what I ended up doing was not hiding anything, because there actually wasn't really anywhere to hide these envelopes in the classroom. And instead, I sort of set up these stations or mission areas where students would come in. They would get into their groups that I would organise or that they would organise themselves. And then they would go to these different stations, and they would do a particular mission that was set for that certain desk or station that they were at. One of the missions, for example, was for them to realize how much sugar is within certain drinks. So they had to separate these drink bottles from what they thought was the least healthiest to the most healthiest. And then they stacked these sugar sachets in front of each of these drinks based on how much sugar content was in these drinks per serving. So that was really allowing them to see tangibly how much sugar is within certain drinks. And it was very interesting for them, and they found it very kinesthetic, like learning. They found it very interesting because they could see, how much sugar, for example, was in a Gatorade, and they were able to see that very physically. And I think that really hammered the point of how much sugar is within these drinks that we typically see as being healthy, when really they're full of sugar, especially, drinks like Gatorade and that sort of thing. So that was just one of the missions. And the idea was for them to complete a mission. Then they performed a ring toss game, which was more like it was set up so that they could perform a quick activity and then go on to their next mission. So they took their sheets with them. And then the idea was that they completed all their missions, and the first group to complete them all won as such. And I gave them a handball as a prize for the group that came first, and I was able to see their final sheets and able to determine if they had in-depth answers enough, because I was finding that some of the groups completed them too quickly, and I would go back and go, oh, well, you've missed X, Y, Z in a certain mission. And I got that idea mainly from the internet and it's really used really well in classes like history and that sort of thing, because they could actually use memorabilia from like old times, like 1950s and things like that, which I found really, really cool. So in future, I would want to plan something that is a bit more, that involves a bit more of different cross skilling. So I could like go into a bit more of science and involve, you know, them measuring something or something along those lines. So with more time, I would, you know, go into it a bit more. But I felt like it worked well and the students were really engaged, which was my primary goal of
Yeah,
the
great. So
statement.
it did have that result that the students were engaged in your lesson. And when you were collecting those sheets and stuff at the end, and you were looking at their depth of understanding, did you see that, like, were most of them actually getting a really good grasp of what was happening?
Yes, definitely, especially with the certain, especially with the sugar activity, they really got that. And then I had another activity which was measuring the sodium within products, because a lot of students don't really realize how much sodium is in certain products, such as tiny teddies, for example. There's a lot of sodium within those because of the manufacturing. So again, they were able to see and measure how much sodium was in these products, and then minus that from a sodium total that they're required to have for the day. And I found that they were able to work that out really well, and really have a deeper level of knowledge with those certain activities. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. So you've had this great activity with this escape room thing. Your kids really enjoyed it. They got lots of learning out of it. You then also, you know, shared your orienteering activity that you did. What did you do with the students in relation to orienteering, and how was that helpful for your students?
Yes. So that was another lesson. Ideally, I would want to have that over a unit. But having that one lesson, what I really wanted them to get out of that was to develop their teamwork skills and their communication skills between each other, and to work with people that they're not used to working with. So I made sure that I determined the groups for that. And what I did with that was I really wanted them to gain a sense of what orienteering is, but within the refines of me being able to supervise them in a school setting. So what that meant was that it was a very miniature version of orienteering as such, because I couldn't go out into the bush and that sort of thing and, you know, set up control points and stuff like that. So what I ended up doing with that is I took them down to the back oval. So they met at a certain classroom, and then I talked about what was going to happen. I talked them through what orienteering was. I even showed them a little bit of a video to get them thinking about the idea conceptually. Then I took them down to the back oval and I said, okay, we all have to start in the middle of the oval. You're in your groups and you're all given a map. And the map was just of this this back oval of the school, and it had certain control points. In orienteering, they call them control points, and it's just basically circles on a map that they had to go to, and that one person from each group had to go to and find an envelope, and in that envelope was a letter. And they had to find all the envelopes and all the letters and then bring it back to me in the middle of the oval and unjumble a word. So the letters created a word, and the word was something to do with teamwork. So I had them as being teams or united or collaboration, those sort of words. I had those within those envelopes. And then they created that, and then they filled out a table, and on the table it was trying to get them to think about certain aspects of a map. So where north is, where east is, how to actually turn the map to find that and to find their envelope. And I saw a lot of kids using their maps, holding them up and going, oh, yep, there's north, you know, there's west. Okay, so we need to turn it that way and then, you know, go that way. Which is what I really wanted them to get out of it. So I found that really, really good. And then they were also required to fill out on this table landmarks that they saw. So, you know, rocks, AFL post, whatever they could see, they then drew that, and they counted their paces as well. And all of that are things that are in a map, just a way for them to see it tangibly. So the paces thing, my idea behind that was that they actually were working out a scale of a map, but just with their own feet, and walking a certain distance and then counting how many paces to a certain distance. And the idea behind that was that they learn how to read maps, because I feel like that's a skill now that is lost on a lot of students, including myself. I didn't really know before even doing this activity how much I needed to know where north was, like true north. And
you're too young, Kirsten. You're too young.
I know.
I remember the days sitting in cars trying to drive and navigate maps and flicking pages in the big Gregory's directory of streets and stuff, trying to work out where we were going.
I remember my mum taking me to parties where she would get out the old, street map and be looking at that, and I would be trying to, direct her, and she'd be freaking out. But nowadays I just feel like it's so phones, so Google Maps straight away, it's got it all done for you. Yeah, so it was very interesting to see my students self-direct themselves in trying to understand that knowledge. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's such a good skill, that orienteering skill. It can actually be used in lots of different contexts. It's not just for, we tend to often put it in the category of, bushwalking and, the whole idea of, maybe in the army, or people who are in remote rescue, or just when you get completely lost or something, these big things that people often don't associate with themselves. But it wasn't that long ago that, we were using it for our basic traveling, getting around places. And, Google has a lot to answer for sometimes.
Yes,
it's very good in some ways.
Yes, you totally forget, what it's like. And students, being given a map, they may not even know how to turn a page, or that there's another page, afterwards, after a certain street. So yeah, very interesting. And yes, totally a skill that I feel is very overlooked nowadays.
Yeah. So let's go back to your 2 lessons and talk about how you think this actually helped your students to become lifelong learners. How do you think that's impacted them in that sense?
Yes. So in thinking about this, I think that ultimately what it allows for is engagement with new content, with content that they're unfamiliar with completely, and it draws them in. It self-motivates them and self-directs them. And I think that leads ultimately to lifelong learning, because if I just plant, the seed in one student's, mind that orienteering is a thing, or I, tell them, or they get from the escape room how much sugar is in their Gatorade the next time that they go to drink it. I think that promotes lifelong learning, because it allows them to gain motivation to learn and to keep learning, which I think is what ultimately these activities are about.
Yeah, and I think both of your activities too, they're both very problem-based activities where kids are really having to solve puzzles and try and find out how they actually go about the process of solving things, which I think when it comes to real life is very much the way reality happens. You get presented with something that you're unfamiliar with, you don't know the answer to, and therefore you've got to go and find how to do that. And it's these kinds of activities that allow them to think about the process of, well, how do I actually work out what I need to do in order to solve what's been put in front of me. And so I think problem solving activities, and particularly things like escape rooms, orienteering, and there's a great one that I know of as well called Breakout EDU, which is all about hacking into boxes using codes and puzzles and solving all that kind of stuff as well. And people have created some really great ones of those, and I'll put a link on the show notes for anyone who wants to get access to Breakout EDU, or where you went, Kirsten, which is the activehistory.co.uk/escape room link. So I'll put all that up on the show notes, not the homepage, on the show notes. So can you give our teachers just one thing, if they're going to start or try and just instigate something along these lines in their classroom this week, where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, so I definitely think starting with internet research is definitely where to go. That's obviously where I find everything, and it may take a little bit of looking to find, you know, a good resource that is well thought out, but it's definitely worth it. And there's certain orienteering websites and places from actual orienteering organisations that I found really helpful as well. Queensland government, I believe, was one, and they actually have resources that are already done for you, like lessons and things like that are already completed. And yeah, the active history website that you were talking about, that has a really, really good one, history based, that I based my nutrition one off. So yeah, those resources, definitely looking at those first. And then also acknowledging the fact that it is going to take a fair bit of planning, and it is going to take a fair bit of resources.
And is there any chance that you're going to, share your lesson plans maybe that you did, and I can chuck them up on my site?
Yeah, definitely. So I've sent them to you. I've sent them to two other teachers that asked as well, because I'm always happy to, you know, share, because I think that learning should be for everyone, and if one of us can improve, then why don't we all? So yeah, happy to share.
That's fantastic. So thank you so much, Kirsten, for coming on. And I can't believe you have a job yet for next year. So anyone who out there, any head teacher at PDH, and I know there's plenty of head teachers for PDH who are listening, if you have a job for Kirsten, please, get in contact with her. She's in the Teachers PD group on Facebook, so you can come in there and find her that way if you like, or just shoot me an email and I'll connect the two of you for sure. Because by the looks of what she's doing some really great stuff. She's coming up with some great ideas. And I think she's going to be a great teacher to have in any faculty. I wish my school was hiring right now. So thank you so much for joining us, Kirsten. So Kirsten, I think I've said that a couple of times wrong. I apologise for that.
I get it all the time. Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening, if you want to head over to teacherspd.net/66, you'll get the show notes for this episode. I'll make sure all the links are there to the websites that Kirsten used, and also be sharing her resources that she's got on that site page as well. So please come over to there. But if that's it for this week, until next week, I look forward to chatting to you. Don't forget that school's almost done. It's almost done. Year's nearly out. Bye, everyone.